Let me tell you, this is a story that sounds like it's straight out of Hollywood, but it is disturbingly real. It's about a murder that stayed cold for almost 40 years and a secret kept by an 81-year-old grandmother who was just living a quiet life.
So just picture this for a second. Detectives show up at the door of an 81-year-old woman in Arizona. She's standing there in her pajamas, and her biggest worry is that she's going to miss her appointments for the day. This was a real conversation. This is what Mary Josephine Bailey said right before she was arrested for a murder that happened 39 years ago. The normalcy of it is just staggering.
So here's the bombshell. In 2023, the quiet life of this elderly woman gets completely turned upside down. And it just makes you ask, right? How on earth does a brutal murder case go cold for that long? And how does it all end with the arrest of a great-grandmother? Let's dive in and see how we got here.
To really get what's going on, we have to rewind the clock way back to a freezing cold December morning in a small town in Wisconsin back in 1985. The whole thing happened in just a few minutes. It's 6:30 in the morning, pitch black outside, and Ivonne Meco heads out to start her car. Her daughter, Julie, is inside and hears these sharp cracking noises, kind of like a whip. She runs to her bathroom window and sees this broad-shouldered figure in a gray coat just hurrying away from the scene holding a paper bag. What the police found was just brutal. Ivonne had been shot 3 times with a .22 caliber gun. The final 2 shots were fired execution style. The killer was standing right over her. But in their rush to get away, they left one single critical clue: a perfect boot print in the fresh snow. Pretty quickly, the police had a prime suspect, Mary Jo Bailey. And you want to know why? Because she owned and wore the exact type of boots that matched that print in the snow. But, suspicion isn't proof. They didn't have a weapon, no confession, nothing else to directly tie her to it. And so the case just stalled. And for decades, that file just sat on a shelf. And there it sat, just gathering dust for all those years. But then a new team of investigators decided to pull that old, cold case file. With fresh eyes, they were determined to get an answer to a question everyone else had long forgotten. 39 years. Just let that sink in for a moment. That's how long a family had to wait for answers. It's how long a killer got to walk free, living a completely normal life. It is an incredible amount of time to keep such a dark, dark secret. When investigators started poking around again, they talked to Mary Jo's own daughter, Brenda. And this quote just says it all. It really captures how bewildered the family was. Imagine living under this cloud of suspicion for decades, trying to square the mother you know with the person the police think she is. The only way her daughter could even explain it was, well, maybe she had some kind of psychotic break. So what was the big breakthrough? How did investigators finally crack this thing after all this time? Well, they went back to one key piece of evidence from 1985, something that had always been a loose thread: the murder weapon. And this, right here, is where Mary Jo's whole story just falls apart. See, she always claimed that she got rid of her .22 caliber pistol before the murder ever happened. But investigators, they tracked down the man who actually bought it, and he told a very different story. He confirmed, yep, he bought the gun for Mary Jo herself, but it was after Ivonne Meco was already dead. That was the lie that blew this case wide open. So now they have her. They've got the lie, they've re-interviewed other witnesses. They have a real case. So investigators fly to Arizona to confront Mary Jo Bailey. But the way they did it was pretty unusual. Instead of coming in hot with an aggressive interrogation, the lead investigator just laid it all out. He told her, look, our #1 goal here is closure. It wasn't about revenge or just locking up an old woman. It was about finally providing closure for Ivonne's family, for Mary Jo's own family, and for the whole community. So they gave her 2 options, 2 very clear paths. Path A was what they called the quiet resolution. Hire a lawyer, work with the DA, and just close the book on this thing without all the drama of a big trial. Or there was Path B, the full process: arrest, extradition from Arizona, a high bond, and a first-degree murder trial that they were pretty sure she was going to lose. They were giving her a choice. And after hearing everything, after all this time, after being offered a path to a quiet end, this was her answer. She decided she needed to get legal advice. And with those words, she basically slammed the door on option A and chose the path that would lead her straight into a courtroom.
And so, the final chapter began. The case of the state of Wisconsin versus 81-year-old Mary Josephine Bailey finally went to trial.
The prosecution laid everything out, all the evidence they had gathered over nearly 4 decades. The boot prints, the new interviews, her huge lie about the gun, and even a note they found in her purse describing the victim's truck. And in May of 2024, the jury came back with its verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. The sentence was life in prison.
And let's be real about what that sentence means. At her age, a life sentence is absolute. Mary Jo Bailey will be over 100 years old before she's even eligible for parole. She is going to die in prison.
So the 39-year story has its legal ending, but it leaves us with this much deeper question. When justice takes that long to get here, after so much time has passed, after lives have been lived and secrets have been buried, what does that closure really look like? What does it truly mean for everyone involved? It really makes you think, doesn't it?